Nobody saw it coming. One moment, the story of Chrisean rock, Blueface, and their young son was simmering quietly under the glare of public attention. The next, it had erupted into one of the most chaotic, emotional, and shocking celebrity meltdowns in recent memory. What began as whispered tensions and private disputes had detonated into a spectacle that left fans, insiders, and celebrities alike scrambling to process the fallout. At the heart of it all was not just a volatile couple, but a child whose very existence had become a weapon in a public power struggle, raising questions about parenthood, loyalty, and respect in ways that few anticipated. According to multiple insider accounts, viral clips, and first-hand reports, the situation did not escalate merely into harsh words. It went further, much further. Screaming matches, alleged flying objects, security intervention, all of it unfolded in full view of onlookers and the prying eyes of the internet. The central question dominating conversation was simple yet devastating. Had Chrisean Rock finally reached her breaking point after Blueface publicly denied the paternity of their child? And if so, what would be the emotional and social consequences for everyone involved? The meltdown appeared to be a breaking point months in the making, fueled by layers of unresolved tension, control issues, and emotional volatility. These elements had long simmered beneath the surface, magnified by a relationship lived almost entirely in public view. Chrisean and Blueface were not a conventional couple. Their connection was chaotic from the outset, defined by extremes of obsession, power struggles, and emotional highs and lows. Fans had watched their story unfold like a real-time soap opera, moments of loyalty and adoration followed by public humiliation, mockery, and jealousy-fueled escalation. From the earliest days of their public interactions, Chrisean fought for recognition and validation. Blueface, in turn, alternated between praise and provocation, one moment hailing her as his ride or die, the next mocking her vulnerabilities or publicly flaunting other women to elicit reactions. The feedback loop was vicious. Her explosive responses fueled his content and attention, while his provocations kept her emotionally tethered to the cycle. Arguments routinely escalated into verbal warfare or even physical confrontations captured on live streams, leaving viewers to wonder if what they were witnessing had crossed into dangerous territory. Yet, despite the volatility, they consistently returned to one another, drawn together by intensity, ego, and the magnetic pull of drama. The pregnancy was supposed to change the trajectory of their relationship. Fans had hoped a baby would introduce stability, forcing both parents to act responsibly. Reality, however, proved harsher. Instead of fostering calm, the pregnancy magnified pre-existing issues. Blueface's behavior increasingly seemed detached, lukewarm, and disengaged. Chrisean, by contrast, embraced the notion of building a family, publicly championing the potential for love and unity, despite the challenges she had long endured in the relationship. Inside sources painted an even grimmer picture. Late-night arguments over loyalty, trust, and most painfully, paternity claims created a constant atmosphere of tension. Initially dismissed as gossip, murmurs about Blueface's doubts gained traction over time, reinforced by subtle remarks on interviews, streams, and casual interactions. The pattern became undeniable. This was not a one-off incident but an ongoing narrative of uncertainty and manipulation. For Chrisean, the impact was profound. Already living under relentless scrutiny, she now faced the additional trauma of public humiliation and personal disrespect from the father of her child. The emotional toll compounded. Not only was she responsible for navigating a high-profile relationship, but she also had to contend with constant questioning of her worth, loyalty, and parenting capabilities, all while carrying or raising their son under a microscope. Public opinion split sharply. Some defended Blueface, framing his doubts as a reasonable response in a notoriously unstable dynamic. Others rallied behind Chrisean, decrying his behavior as emotional abuse and manipulation, using the child as leverage to maintain control. Every action, every comment, Every post became another opportunity for speculation. Every interaction was scrutinized for signs of escalation or reconciliation. The tipping point, according to witnesses, occurred when Blueface moved beyond private or subtle remarks and voiced his doubts openly in front of others. The incident reportedly began in a seemingly casual setting, a gathering of friends or associates, with cameras inevitably capturing the scene. Blueface initially appeared relaxed, joking and laughing. Chrisean, more subdued, observed the energy shift, sensing tension before it erupted. Then the topic of tea. The child arose. What should have been a neutral mention quickly escalated. Blueface, instead of handling the discussion with care or concern, allegedly mocked and questioned the child's paternity openly, smirking as if the topic were amusing rather than sensitive. Witnesses described the atmosphere as tense, with Chrisean visibly hardening, her body language signaling a surge of accumulated frustration. The months of emotional labor, public humiliation, and private doubt converged in that moment. The reaction was swift and explosive. Chrisean confronted him directly, her voice rising in anger and pain. What began verbally escalated into a chaotic outburst. Furniture reportedly shifted or was thrown, and security had to intervene to prevent further escalation. Clips from bystanders' phones quickly surfaced online, fragments of the event circulating rapidly, fueling discussion, dissection, and heated commentary. Social media was ablaze. Some celebrated the outburst as a long-overdue assertion of dignity. Others condemned it as uncontrolled rage, dangerous for all involved, especially their child. Influencers and celebrities observed from a distance, many dropping cryptic comments fans analyzed as coded reactions or subtle support. This incident was not isolated. Their history revealed a clear pattern of escalation and retaliation. Early in their relationship, Chrisean demonstrated fierce loyalty, often enduring scrutiny and personal sacrifice to prove her commitment. Blueface, notorious for his multiple entanglements and provocative antics, repeatedly tested those boundaries. Moments of praise were quickly followed by public humiliation, attention to other women, or jokes targeting her vulnerabilities. Each cycle reinforced the dynamic. Chrisean's reactions fueled content, while Blueface's provocations maintained the tension and kept her emotionally engaged. Birth of their son, Chrisean Jesus, commonly called Junior, amplified these dynamics. Pregnancy introduced new responsibilities and physical challenges, while their existing volatility intensified. Blueface's public engagement appeared to wane, with fewer supportive posts and evasive commentary on fatherhood. Chrisean, embracing the challenge, documented the journey extensively, sharing moments of joy alongside vulnerability, as if willing the family's cohesion into existence through sheer determination. Yet the paternity question lingered like an unshakable shadow. Reports suggest that even after DNA tests confirmed Blueface as the father, his behavior continued to signal doubt or detachment. References to past relationships, including one with the late Ronnie, seemed to sustain public speculation. For Chrisean, these repeated insinuations were devastating, striking at her identity as a mother, her value within the relationship, and the stability she sought for her child. Each denial, smirk, or offhand remark was more than a personal affront. It was a calculated erosion of trust and legitimacy. The most explosive aspect of the latest incident was not only the public denial itself, but the pattern it represented. This was not a slip of the tongue. Reports describe a history of mockery regarding the child's appearance, intelligence, and circumstances. Chrisean has reportedly set boundaries to shield Junior from exposure to negativity, only to have these boundaries dismissed, challenged, or undermined. According to her accounts, the provocations appeared deliberate, designed to reel her back into conflict for content, clout, or control. Fans and observers, already familiar with the couple's volatility, interpreted the latest events as an inevitable culmination of months of unresolved tension. Every element, from public humiliation to alleged physical escalation, felt like the inevitable outcome of a relationship built on extremes. Each party had contributed to the cycle, but in this incident, the balance of power tipped in a way that left Chrisean positioned as both the target and the agent of a raw, immediate response. The broader implications of the meltdown are significant. Beyond entertainment or social media speculation, the events highlight deep questions about boundaries, consent, respect, and parental responsibility. Chrisean's position as a mother, navigating intense scrutiny, underscores the personal stakes involved. For Blueface, the decision to publicly question paternity reflects not only a fractured relational dynamic, but also a choice to expose private matters to the public arena, intensifying both personal and cultural consequences. In analyzing the events, one must also consider the psychological factors at play. Emotional volatility, perceived betrayal, and the constant glare of public attention create a pressure cooker environment. Chrisean's reaction, while explosive, can be interpreted as the culmination of prolonged stress, humiliation, and perceived threat to personal and familial identity. Blueface's role, whether seen as provocation, judgment, or manipulation, contributed directly to the escalation. The presence of a child complicates matters further, making every action subject to scrutiny, legal implications, and moral judgment. Social media response has been instantaneous. Fans polarize rapidly, celebrity observers weigh in cryptically, and narratives compete in real time for dominance. The incident has prompted broader conversation about accountability, emotional abuse, and the challenges faced by public figures navigating intimate relationships under constant observation. Memes, comment threads, and analytical breakdowns proliferate, amplifying the emotional intensity of the situation. As of now, the situation remains fluid. Chrisean continues to assert her voice and perspective, while Blueface's responses vacillate between engagement and withdrawal. The child remains at the center of attention, both as a symbol of the relationship's stakes and as an individual affected by public conflict. Analysts note that the potential for future escalations remains high, given the history of repeated cycles and the intensity of unresolved grievances. Ultimately, this meltdown serves as a stark illustration of how high-profile relationships can magnify emotional complexity. When loyalty, identity, and parenthood intersect under the constant scrutiny of fans, media, and social platforms, small disputes can escalate rapidly into crises. Chrisean Rock's outburst, whether viewed as justified, alarming, or both, is a vivid reminder that the interplay of personal trauma, public pressure, and relational volatility can produce consequences that extend far beyond the participants themselves. This incident will likely be dissected for years, not only for the raw spectacle but for its broader commentary on celebrity culture, emotional labor, and parenting under scrutiny. The question that lingers is whether resolution is possible or if the latest events mark a permanent fracture. Regardless, the saga has cemented itself as one of the most intense, controversial, and deeply personal narratives in contemporary celebrity culture, one where power, vulnerability, and identity collide, leaving audiences, family, and fans alike grappling with shock, sympathy, and speculation. The story of Chrisean, Blueface, and their son is far from over. Each clip, comment, and interview adds layers, reshaping public perception and influencing future interactions. The volatility, the patterns of provocation and retaliation, and the emotional stakes ensure that observers will remain captivated, waiting for the next escalation or potential reconciliation. In the landscape of celebrity drama, few narratives have captured the intertwining of personal vulnerability and public spectacle with such intensity. This latest eruption stands as both a culmination of past patterns and a harbinger of what may come. The child at the center, Chrisean's emotional response, and Blueface's provocative behavior are all intertwined in a complex, ongoing story that continues to challenge notions of accountability, love, and responsibility. For fans, observers, and cultural commentators, the saga offers endless material for debate, reflection, and speculation. In the end, the drama underscores the power of context, history, and exposure. Relationships that unfold under public scrutiny are amplified, magnifying ordinary tensions into extraordinary events. Chrisean Rock's confrontation represents not merely a personal breaking point, but the crystallization of months, perhaps years, of pressure, manipulation, and emotional labor. Blueface's role illustrates the consequences of unchecked provocation and public doubt, especially in the context of parenthood and emotional vulnerability. As the clips circulate, the conversations evolve. Analysts examine the psychological dynamics, fans dissect body language, and celebrities drop hints or cryptic responses. The narrative continues to expand, reaching beyond the immediate participants and touching broader cultural themes. Parental responsibility, emotional boundaries, and the pressures of living a life constantly observed and judged. The story remains unresolved, and for now, the public watches, captivated, divided, and horrified. Each new revelation, statement, or viral clip reshapes the understanding of the relationship, the child's well-being, and the broader implications for celebrity culture. In this ongoing saga, there are no easy answers, and the fallout will likely reverberate long after the immediate chaos fades. Chrisean Rock, Blueface, and their son now occupy a complicated intersection of fame, family, and public drama. Every action carries amplified consequences, every interaction is scrutinized, and every statement is interpreted through a lens of past behavior and existing tension. The story is far from its conclusion. Every observer knows that in this highly charged dynamic, the next escalation, or the first genuine reconciliation, could arrive at an "why" moment, fundamentally altering the trajectory of all involved. In the world of celebrity drama, few stories have spiraled as violently, publicly, and emotionally as the saga of Chrisean Rock, Blueface, and their young son. What began as whispered tensions behind closed doors has exploded into a chaotic, raw, and shocking spectacle that continues to grip fans, insiders, and observers alike. At the center of it all is a child whose very existence has become a flashpoint, forcing questions about parenthood, responsibility, and the cost of fame to the forefront of a story that has been anything but conventional. Blueface, for his part, has framed his actions as the response of a man tired of being painted as an absent father. He claims to have been unfairly portrayed, arguing that his involvement with his other children contradicts the narrative being forced upon him. In interviews, freestyles, live streams, and social media posts, he has repeatedly suggested that this plot to claim his newest child no longer sits right with him. To outsiders, this positioning turns deeply personal grievances into ongoing public entertainment, a cycle of drama that both fuels their brand and erodes the lines between private and public life. The most recent confrontation, however, crossed a line into chaos and violence. Multiple reports describe screaming matches, objects being thrown, and security intervening to prevent the situation from spiraling even further. In an instant, months, perhaps years, of built-up tension erupted. Fans flooded social media with reactions ranging from condemnation to support, from memes to earnest pleas for intervention. Some urged Chrisean to focus on her son's well-being and to remove herself from toxic environments. Others pointed to Blueface's history, framing his dismissive words as provocation sufficient to justify the outburst, if not the violence itself. The mental health angle adds another layer of complexity. Both Chrisean and Blueface have faced highly public struggles. Chrisean's past volatility and trauma are well documented, while Blueface has navigated legal battles, periods of incarceration, and a public persona rooted in unapologetic bravado. Introducing a child into such a combustible dynamic raises heartbreaking questions. Can two adults so entangled in conflict model stability for a young child? Or is the son doomed to become collateral damage, in a saga defined by power struggles and emotional manipulation. What many observers fail to fully grasp is the twist surrounding the paternity narrative. Despite repeated denials and references by Blueface to another man, Chrisean claims to possess evidence, including alleged DNA test results, proving him as the biological father. Blueface's insistence otherwise, whether motivated by emotional detachment, strategic control of the narrative, or genuine disbelief, adds yet another layer of tension and uncertainty. The discrepancy forces a deeper reevaluation. Is the denial about facts, or is it about power and psychological maneuvering within an already unstable relationship? The confrontation that brought all this tension into full view began innocuously enough. Witness accounts describe a low-key gathering with cameras, phones, and other recording devices already present. Blueface started relaxed, joking with friends and bystanders. Chrisean, on the other hand, seemed quieter, observant, and wary, reading the subtle shifts in tone that anyone familiar with their dynamic would recognize as precursors to conflict. The trigger came when conversation turned to their child. What should have been a neutral discussion quickly escalated when Blueface allegedly mocked and questioned the child's paternity openly in front of witnesses. The smirk he carried was described as dismissive, signaling amusement rather than concern. For Chrisean, this was the culmination of months of doubt, humiliation, and emotional manipulation. Witnesses report that her energy shifted visibly, a mix of frustration, hurt, and fury that had been building for months finally finding an outlet. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. Chrisean confronted him directly, raising her voice in anger and pain. The verbal argument escalated rapidly, reportedly turning physical. Objects were knocked over or thrown, security intervened to separate the pair, and the bystanders' reactions ranged from alarm to recording footage for viral consumption. The result was a flood of clips circulating online, each fragment offering a glimpse into the chaos, from raised voices to sudden movements, to the raw intensity of two people caught in a feedback loop of long-standing grievances. The outburst was not calculated or performative. It was the eruption of raw, unfiltered emotion. Months or even years of perceived slights, dismissals, and public humiliation had reached a breaking point, and Chrisean's response was a tidal wave of rage. Reports suggest she lunged toward Blueface without hesitation. Unbothered by the audience, the cameras, or the potential fallout, Blueface, by contrast, appeared to do little to de-escalate. Instead, insiders claim he met her intensity with sarcasm, dismissive laughter, and offhand remarks, fanning the flames of conflict. Within minutes, the room had descended into total disorder. But even the chaos did not tell the whole story. In one viral clip, amid the confusion and attempts at separation, Chrisean allegedly shouted a phrase that reframed the narrative entirely. "You've been saying that behind my back." Analysts and fans have dissected this line endlessly. It suggests that Blueface's questioning of paternity was not a one-off comment, but part of an ongoing, private pattern, a series of remarks, insinuations, or offhand jokes that had been building over time, now erupting in full view of the public. Social media erupted in response. Some viewers condemned the outburst as unacceptable, arguing that violence is never the answer, particularly in a setting involving a child and witnesses. Others argued that Chrisean's response was inevitable. Anyone subjected to repeated public humiliation, doubt about their child's legitimacy, and calculated emotional manipulation could only hold back for so long before reaching a boiling point. The aftermath of the confrontation added new layers of intrigue. Eyewitness reports suggest that after security separated the pair, Blueface made another comment, quieter but now surfacing in new clips, hinting that his denial of paternity might be based on more than simple doubt. Some insiders claim he suggested possessing actual proof. If true, this could mean that what the public had seen was only the surface of a deeper, more explosive story. The mere possibility of concrete evidence introduces questions about responsibility, credibility, and the potential for future escalation. The intensity of scrutiny only increased as the internet went into forensic mode. Clips multiplied across platforms, with fans slowing down footage, enhancing audio and cross-referencing past interactions. Observers treated every second like evidence, revisiting old live streams, interviews, and freestyles for hidden clues. Amid this scrutiny, a particularly bombshell moment emerged from a clearer clip, Blueface allegedly muttering under his breath, "I already did the test." If accurate, this suggested that he had conducted a DNA test without Chrisean's knowledge, a revelation that transformed the discussion from an emotional meltdown into a tangled web of evidence, secrecy, and conflicting realities. Speculation exploded overnight. Fake documents and manipulated screenshots proliferated, with some suggesting results excluding Blueface as the father, while others purported the opposite. The lines between fact, fabrication, and interpretation blurred, leaving fans, analysts, and insiders scrambling to separate truth from narrative. Meanwhile, Chrisean maintained silence in the immediate aftermath. Her absence from social media was notable. For someone whose brand has often revolved around instantaneous emotional reaction, the pause felt heavy, ominous, and deliberate. When Chrisean finally returned, she did so with a live stream that sent ripples across the internet. She did not offer a simple denial or explanation. Instead, she reframed the entire narrative, accusing Blueface of manipulating the public, drawing out the paternity drama for attention, and using their son as a storyline to maintain relevance. She claimed that no legitimate DNA test had been performed on his side, raising questions about the meaning behind his earlier statement. Was it a bluff, a provocation, or another layer of deception in a story already steeped in public spectacle? To punctuate the live stream, Chrisean ended with a cryptic line, "You know why he really doing this?" and abruptly disconnected. The online world erupted in speculation. Fans theorized endlessly. Was this about control, legal maneuvering, power over Chrisean herself, financial strategy, or perhaps a personal vendetta hidden behind the spectacle? Theories proliferated as social media parsed every word, gesture, and previous clip for hidden context. The ongoing saga reveals the broader stakes of their conflict. Beyond entertainment, the story raises questions about emotional health, parental responsibility, and the impact of fame on private life. Chrisean's outburst, whether interpreted as justified or regrettable, is rooted in a history of humiliation, doubt, and emotional manipulation. Blueface's public dismissals, sarcasm, and inconsistencies reflect a willingness to weaponize doubt and uncertainty for personal narrative control. Their interactions demonstrate a pattern of extremes rather than stability. Every minor argument escalates into spectacle. Every moment of reconciliation is temporary, setting the stage for the next eruption. The child at the center of the narrative bears the weight of a conflict neither created nor can fully comprehend. While fans may pick sides, consume the drama, or dissect clips for entertainment, the human cost is tangible: fractured trust, emotional scars, and exposure to patterns of behavior no child should face. As new clips, leaks, and insider accounts continue to emerge, the story remains fluid. Some predict that Chrisean may finally walk away to protect her child, while others expect yet another reconciliation fueled by their intense connection. Regardless, the public spectacle has exposed profound truths about the costs of fame, the complexity of high-profile relationships, and the challenges of raising a child amid constant scrutiny. This saga is more than an isolated meltdown. It is the culmination of years of tension, drama, and emotional labor magnified by celebrity. It illustrates the danger of relationships lived publicly, where private grievances become viral content and every perceived slight escalates into public scrutiny. Chrisean's actions were a response to sustained disrespect, doubt, and manipulation, while Blueface's behavior demonstrates the ways in which narrative control and ego can intensify conflict. As the dust settles, there is no simple resolution. Healing would require both parties to step away from the public eye, address personal issues, and prioritize the child's needs above fame, ego, and unresolved grievances. Whether they are capable of doing so remains unknown. For now, the story continues to unfold, a tense, ongoing drama that serves as both cautionary tale and social spectacle. In the end, the saga of Chrisean Rock, Blueface, and their son is emblematic of the perilous intersection between fame, personal trauma, and parenting. The recent confrontation, the paternity dispute, and the public fallout demonstrate how unresolved grievances can explode into chaos, particularly when mediated by the pressures of social media and celebrity culture. The child remains the silent witness, a focal point of conflict, and the unintended victim of a cycle that has repeated itself publicly for months. As fans, analysts, and celebrities dissect every detail, the story continues to evolve. New clips, insider reports, and cryptic statements ensure that the narrative will remain volatile, compelling, and heartbreaking for some time. The lesson, perhaps, is that fame amplifies conflict, emotional vulnerability, and relational dysfunction, especially when private matters are turned into public currency. In this context, the confrontation was more than an isolated incident. It was the inevitable eruption of a highly charged, emotionally complex relationship. Chrisean's outburst, Blueface's dismissive responses, and the uncertainty surrounding the child's paternity all reflect the consequences of living a life in which private grievances, emotional manipulation, and public exposure collide. For those watching, it is a cautionary tale about the intersection of visibility, vulnerability, and accountability. What looks entertaining from afar often masks deep emotional wounds, patterns of manipulation, and the potential for harm, particularly to those least able to protect themselves, like children. The saga is far from over, and the next chapter will likely reveal even more about the dynamics, intentions, and consequences of this high-profile, deeply personal conflict. In the world of celebrity drama, few stories have gripped audiences with the intensity of the ongoing saga between Chrisean Rock, Blueface, and their son. What began as private tension behind closed doors has erupted into a very public spectacle, drawing in fans, critics, and insiders alike. The recent confrontation, captured in viral clips circulating across social media, has intensified scrutiny of every detail, from paternity disputes and alleged DNA tests to questions of emotional manipulation, accountability, and parental responsibility. One particular line, screamed by Chrisean during the chaos, immediately became a focal point. "You've been saying that behind my back." That single phrase cracked open a Pandora's box of speculation. Perhaps the argument was just the tip of a larger story, an emotional climax that masked legal, financial, or personal pressures building for months. Fans began to wonder, what if there was a bigger, consequential piece missing, information that could recontextualize the entire saga? Some self-proclaimed insiders suggested the timing of the latest explosion was not coincidental. They whispered that something significant, perhaps a revelation or legal development, was imminent, something that would dwarf the current paternity dispute. Of course, these whispers remain unverified, and no concrete evidence has surfaced. Yet in a culture where every gesture and word is dissected, even unproven claims carry weight. Speculation flourished as fans attempted to reconcile the clips, statements, and social media activity with what they thought they knew about the couple. The combination of public chaos and private intrigue created a perfect storm. Through it all, the most vulnerable figure remains little Chrisean Jr. While the adults exchanged accusations, insults, and dramatic outbursts, he was forced to witness, directly or indirectly, the emotional roller coaster that had consumed their lives. Questions about his sense of security, identity, and stability weighed heavily on observers. The public, however, often overlooked this reality, instead treating the spectacle as entertainment or a storyline to dissect for memes and commentary. Yet the consequences for the child are profound. Repeated exposure to conflict, emotional volatility, and public shaming can leave lasting scars. The latest incident provides a stark illustration of how private pain can quickly become global entertainment in the age of constant connectivity. What began as an argument in a single room escalated within minutes into a viral phenomenon. Videos surfaced almost immediately. Raw footage, slowed-down clips, audio enhancements, and zoom-ins that revealed every micro-expression. Each new angle added depth to the story and intensified speculation. Social media users became amateur investigators, piecing together old live streams, interviews, and past arguments in attempts to understand what had led to this explosion. The divide among fans was immediate and uncompromising. One faction rallied behind Chrisean, pointing to months of perceived humiliation, public questioning of the child's legitimacy, and emotional manipulation. Supporters resurfaced past footage of Blueface laughing during arguments or appearing dismissive toward Chrisean, arguing that the latest confrontation was the inevitable culmination of a toxic pattern. They emphasized that pregnancy and early motherhood already bring emotional vulnerability, and repeated public attacks on her credibility as a parent made a breaking point almost unavoidable. For these supporters, Chrisean's reaction, while intense, was both understandable and justified. Some observers predict that Chrisean may ultimately walk away, prioritizing her child's safety and emotional stability over public visibility and engagement. Others expect temporary reconciliations, a pattern repeated multiple times over the course of their relationship. The uncertainty fuels continued interest, as audiences speculate about motivations, psychological dynamics, and the likelihood of lasting change. As the saga continues, one lesson becomes increasingly apparent. Celebrity culture can turn deeply personal struggles into spectacles with real consequences. Every action, misstep, or emotional outburst is amplified, dissected, and interpreted, often without full context. While fans may debate morality or allegiance, the emotional and psychological costs for those directly involved, and especially for children, are tangible and lasting. The recent meltdown, the ongoing paternity dispute, and the intricate public-private dynamics illustrate the fragility of relationships lived in the spotlight. They also underscore the difficulty of co-parenting in environments where personal conflicts are made public. The story remains unresolved, and with each new development, the stakes grow higher, the theories more complex, and the human cost more visible. Ultimately, the Chrisean Rock and Blueface saga is not just about a single confrontation, a disputed DNA test, or viral social media clips. It is about the collision of fame, trauma, ego, and accountability. It is about the impact of public spectacle on private lives, particularly the lives of children caught in the middle. And it is about the challenge of finding resolution when every disagreement, grievance, or personal failure is amplified for the world to see. As new clips continue to surface and insider reports circulate, the public remains engrossed. Every twist, every nuance, and every unexplained action invites debate, analysis, and speculation. This is a story that is far from over, and for those involved, the path forward remains uncertain. The next chapter could bring clarity, escalation, or unexpected reconciliation. But whatever happens, it will leave lasting consequences for all involved, most importantly for the child at the center of the storm. On the other side, critics condemned her physical escalation. Viral posts, threads, and memes emphasize that violence is never the solution, especially when a child is involved. Users debated the ethical responsibilities of both parents in highly visible, high-conflict scenarios. Some argued that regardless of provocation, the pattern of explosive public behavior could have long-term consequences, both legally and psychologically, for Chrisean Jr. In a social media ecosystem that thrives on extremes, every clip, comment, or reaction became fodder for moral judgment, creating a complex web of competing narratives. Meanwhile, Blueface's relatively muted response added another layer of tension. Observers speculated about his intentions. Was he attempting to let the storm pass, or was he calculating a strategic pause? Every post or statement from him, vague, sarcastic, or seemingly dismissive, was amplified, dissected, and interpreted as evidence of his underlying strategy. The ambiguity surrounding his intentions allowed speculation to flourish, turning the story from a personal dispute into a full-blown social experiment in audience interpretation. The tension was not limited to fans and observers. Industry insiders, collaborators, and brands reportedly monitored developments closely. Relationships, partnerships, and public perception all hung in the balance. In an environment where optics are critical, the fallout from even one poorly timed video could have lasting effects on endorsements, collaborations, or career trajectory. Some insiders quietly distanced themselves from the drama, understanding that aligning with either side, or appearing neutral, was itself a calculated risk. The child, Chrisean Jr., remained the most critical and vulnerable figure in the saga. Observers repeatedly emphasized that exposure to high-conflict environments, especially those amplified by social media, can have long-term consequences. From anxiety and stress to trust issues and identity challenges, the risks are significant. Fans and critics alike debated the ethics of publicizing conflict that directly involves a child, raising questions about responsibility, parenting, and the balance between transparency and protection. Adding to the complexity were conflicting claims about paternity testing. Blueface allegedly stated, "I already did the test," while Chrisean later insisted no legitimate test had been conducted. This discrepancy fueled debate about truth, manipulation, and the power of public perception. Was Blueface bluffing to provoke her, or was he attempting to shape the narrative for public consumption? The uncertainty around such a foundational issue only intensified speculation and heightened stakes, both in terms of personal dynamics and public discourse. A private meeting reportedly followed shortly after the confrontation. Involving Chrisean, Blueface, and a neutral mediator, the discussion focused on addressing immediate fallout, clarifying paternity concerns, and assessing co-parenting strategies. While details remain scarce, insiders suggest the conversation was tense and emotional. Attempts at resolution were complicated by years of accumulated conflict and patterns of manipulation. Observers interpreted the meeting as a temporary pause rather than a lasting solution, with unresolved issues likely to resurface. Public reactions continued to dominate the narrative. Fans acted as amateur investigators, comparing past statements, interviews, and social media posts for clues. Every nuance became evidence, and every prior interaction was recontextualized in light of the viral confrontation. The community's obsession highlights a larger phenomenon in celebrity culture. Private disputes rapidly become collective entertainment, with audiences exerting their interpretations as moral and emotional judgments. The confrontation has also prompted broader discussions about mental health. Both Chrisean and Blueface have histories of publicized struggles, Chrisean with emotional volatility and trauma, and Blueface with legal challenges and a persona built on bravado. The combination of fame, personal conflict, and child-rearing creates an environment of amplified stress and psychological complexity. Observers and commentators emphasize the need for mental health support, boundaries, and professional guidance to navigate such a high-pressure environment. Meanwhile, speculation about motives and hidden agendas remains rampant. Some theorists suggest that the conflict serves as a distraction from other personal or professional matters. Others posit legal implications, custody concerns, or strategic narrative control as driving forces behind the public spectacle. Rumors of undisclosed developments, potential evidence, and undisclosed agreements continue to circulate, keeping audiences engaged and the conversation alive. Amid all this, the lessons of the saga extend beyond celebrity gossip. The story underscores the human cost of turning private conflict into public spectacle. Emotional pain, distrust, and manipulation are magnified in the digital age, with lasting consequences for those directly involved. It also highlights the vulnerability of children raised in environments defined by public scrutiny and volatile adult behavior. For Chrisean Jr., the world has become a constant observer of his family life, shaping his experiences in ways that are impossible to separate from the digital narrative.